Hey everyone, how's it going? I am iamxeracon. I am back once again. These past few weeks have been pretty crazy with final exams and stuff, and the last few days, the last few days of my finals last week, those were the roughest, but I am glad that I can put it all behind me. So for this month's Was It Good video, we're going to take a look at Spider-Man, the animated series, also known as just Spider-Man. Some spoilers ahead though, but also before we get started, let's please check out my other Was It Good videos, and you can see more about other things. So some quick background info. This was the first superhero, or well, maybe one of the first. I mean, it's really hard again to me think about like was this the first one or was Batman the first one? But this was one of the first superhero cartoons I watched, at least, and it was the sole reason as to why Spidey was my favorite Marvel superhero. And as the years went by, I purchased the videos that were they were the only method for me to relive the show outside of seeing some reruns. I think they were on Jetix at one point, but I'm not certain. Um, but they definitely were the only way of reliving the show, minus finding some clips on YouTube. But uh, but unfortunately though, the series never got a full print outside of Europe. I mean, Europe was the only place where you can get the complete series on DVD. Um, I know that when I was a kid, they had like the Hobgoblin one. That's like the one that I solely owned. But then they released other ones. Like they released the Daredevil. They released the Return of the Green Goblin, Ultimate Showdown, Doc Ock, and the Venom saga on video and DVD. But that was pretty much the best you could do. I'm not sure if there were other videos that were released, but that was pretty much it. Now I've heard that the series is on Disney Plus, but I'm not interested in supporting Disney anymore, and stuff like that. And also solely just because I'd rather just have a copy that I can keep, just because it can get pulled from Disney Plus at any time, and that'll be it for you. But getting into the analysis of the show, let's start off with what I loved about it, because it was pretty good. I mean, the comic book style structure of the episodes was great, and it's definitely reminiscent of the earlier Spider-Man comics. And the opening theme song is, ooh, it's so 90s, but it's awesome. I mean, this Batman the Animated Series and X-Men the Animated Series, they were the top superhero themes of the 90s. And in fact, I think that as a whole with superhero television themes, they're the cream of the crop. And while there are some noteworthy themes and motifs in the OST, the Kingpin's theme is the best in my opinion. I mean, seriously, it's only, I think, maybe 5-6 minutes long. Maybe it's more like a fanfare than really a theme. I mean, I guess it could be considered a theme, but it's it's just so you hear that, it steals like the scene, like it's getting serious. But yeah, it's pretty good. The art style of the show is bright and vibrant and gives you that superhero cartoon aesthetic, which is very appealing. I mean, I definitely admire that. And the writing can be episodic at some times, but there are moments where the stories truly shine, especially when they have these story arcs going on. Like for example, the episodes where Peter is framed and has Matt Murdock, aka the Daredevil, be his lawyer. That was awesome. The Green Goblin's return, which was based on the night that Gwen Stacy died. That was good as well. And then some of their best scenes. One of the best scenes of the series was, I think this was the last episode, but was when like a Carnage Spider-Man met Uncle Ben, and like it was a very good moment. Like you'd have to see that. And I also want to point out the fact that it seems like the writers were carefully sculpting out their stories. Like for example, events in one story that seems sort of random could have an impact on another episode. Like for example, in one episode there's sort of this sort of portal device. I mean, it was just one episode that this guy made was trying to make a time dilation portal thing, and then it sort of just is brought on in a later episode, where the Green Goblin finds it, and that sort of like plays out. Well, no, no, Hobgoblin found it. The Hobgoblin found it, and then it just like turned out into like all this other stuff circling around that one thing. So even though the one thing happened in one episode, it still had connection to stuff that later on, and that's something that you sort of see in comic books and stuff, like where like one issue something happens, but then it gets brought back somehow later on and has an impact on the stories later on. Uh, but yeah, and the voice acting is pretty good for the most part. I mean, uh, the characters definitely sound great. And it's gonna sound dumb, but it wasn't until I was like 15 or 16 that I actually learned that Mark Hamill voiced the Hobgoblin, and it makes sense. But I just felt like an idiot at that point just because I didn't realize that. Now there are a few funny moments though with the voice acting. Like I won't say what it is, but just search in the YouTube search feature. Just search "shocker, you can't escape me," and then you'll see exactly what I'm saying. Now, the sad thing is that for each thing that I liked about the series, there seems to be something that I wasn't too fond of. So first of all, I mentioned that I liked the comic book style structure. It complicated some of the things. Let me get into it. Like the writing felt like it had pacing issues, and sometimes the scenes felt rushed. So a character can be having a discussion, suddenly have a random epiphany. It didn't seem like the story was able to develop sometimes because of this. Like it just sort of felt like we're doing one thing. Oh, let's speed things up. Let's move on along and like rush the plot. And I'm like, no, let's take a little time, to simmer in the moment, and stuff like that. And while I appreciate Spider-Man's inner monologue sometimes, which is reminiscent of how he was in the comics, especially like the earlier ones, where you were actually inside his mind, it can be difficult trying to decipher if it's him actually speaking or if he's thinking since he's wearing a mask. Now, sometimes his mouth area does move to represent him talking, but this isn't always the case, so it can be hard to sort of like figure that out. And certain moments also feel comic bookish, like when Mary Jane suddenly returns after Peter fights Harry. Um, that was that felt weird. I mean, it felt like that one panel shot where something happens that you won't learn about for another 4 issues. Um, Kind of like when, what's a good example? Oh, a good example would be when I actually have to look back to make sure this is right. Like right after Norman is killed, there's a shadow that like pops up for one panel, and then it's like, oh, who is this? Find out next time, true believers. Something like that. But that's sort of like what I mean. Like it sort of feels weird and it's a bit janky and it doesn't translate well to um a cartoon. So that's kind of weird. Uh, Also, I was kind of miffed when the series ended that Mary Jane, and again, like I was saying, spoilers. When Mary Jane mysteriously returned, that the Mary Jane that had returned was just a clone. I mean, like, it just felt weird that we have her, but then oh no, she actually was a fake the whole time, and I'm like, why did you do that, guys? I mean, it was really that would just seemed weird to me. Uh, and then while I like the art style of the series, the animation did was stiff. It was very stiff sometimes. I mean, sometimes it looks like the characters were moving at less than 15 frames per second. And then there were a couple animations that were sort of reused and rehashed a couple times. I mean, I don't necessarily have a problem with that, but it's just something that I noticed. And going off this, the fight scenes were very spotty. As I mentioned in the Batman Was a Good video, I know that there were restrictions about what they could show on TV regarding violence and stuff. And I know that Batman was like the show that pushed the envelope. But years later, after rewatching again, it's laughable sometimes, especially after you watch Batman. a good portion of the time, people are thrown, slammed, or kicked with very few punches. I mean, this did. I think it got a little bit better later on in the series, especially since some of the restrictions were loosened. But it was ridiculous, and this is something you can even see with like X-Men, for example. I mean, like Wolverine gets out his claws a lot of times, but then he barely uses them. Like he'll extend his claws out, but then it's like, okay, I'm not gonna use my claws, and like it's really funny sometimes too. Like people are just like thrown and they're like, oh, I'm out, guys. Oh man, that really like knocked me out. But the only real punch I do remember is when Daredevil punched the Kingpin right in the gut, and like I felt the weight of that blow watching it, just because that looked like the first, well, one of the few like real punches I've seen. I was like, wow, that's really good. And these censorships also removed words like kill or dead and replaced them with eliminate, destroy, and dispose. Now, keep in mind, there was a Batman episode called "The Man Who Killed Batman." Like they put that right in the title, and like, wow. I mean, they've used the word "kill" like quite a few times in the Batman series, and like this isn't even going to talk about like what they did with New Adventures of Batman and Robin. I'm like, wow. It's just really funny about how much like the the Marvel 90 series like were really trying to like keep themselves like safe from everything. Also, realistic guns have been replaced with the kid-friendly laser guns. And I'm like, seriously, I can understand the supervillains having such high tech weaponry, having lasers and stuff. But the cops have lasers too. Like the only time I recall seeing anything that resembled a real gun was the one that Robbie had hidden away. But I do respect that they were trying to like sort of like send a message here, and they had to make it realistic to help with the story of Robbie's son trying to join a gang and that he needed to get one as part of a test, because it does make the situation more serious and impactful than a cartoony gun. Uh, and I and again, I don't, I don't, I hate making these comparisons, but if you look at Batman again, they had revolvers, Tommy guns, and a couple of turrets. And only supervillains got access to high tech laser guns, which, to be honest, were more impactful than these pew pew guns. I mean, seriously, there was a medical surgery laser that like that like cut through stuff, and like Spider-Man gets hit with these pew pew guns, and he's like, "Oh wow, I've been stunned." I mean, sure, they've said they've had stun guns, but like everyone's just like shooting stun lasers. I'm like, "Oh my gosh, this is so silly." And lastly, I guess you could say for a lighthearted jest, I thought it was funny that the FBI laughed off Peter's description of Doctor Octopus. I mean, in a city that has the Lizard, the Fantastic Four, X-Men, and more, not to mention the fact that years earlier, we had Captain America. One man with four metallic appendages seems far fetched. But yeah, guys, that's it. In conclusion, while Spider-Man had a lot that was great, it was a bit of a double-edged sword, with each pro having sort of a con to it. It's definitely a good watch, but it is undeniably flawed. Now, don't hold me to this, but I might have another video coming this week that ties into today's episode. You see, following this Spider-Man video is another Spidey video. I'm going to be taking a look at the Sam Raimi Spider-Man trilogy. And yeah, we'll see what happens with that. But that's going to do it for today. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. I appreciate it. And I hope you have a great Memorial Day tomorrow. Stay safe out there. And let me know what your favorite Spider-Man episode was in the comments below. So until next time, everyone, I am iamxeracon signing off. Have a good one.